can do. RNG are your nightmare.
Set it off like this. Set it off like. Set it off like this. Burn it, burn it.
Welcome back to MSI 2022 in Busan, South Korea. Here we can see G22 and O arriving to the arena, hoping to keep that undefeated streak alive. We'll be playing against Evil Geniuses in our opening match of day 2 of the Rumble stage. Inspired already getting lost en route to the venue. Let's see if his pathing is better in-game. Top of the morning to you. I'm Quickshot, joined by Dagda and Aux for an all-Irish analyst desk.
Yeah, could have thought Cursi to awesome downer.
I understood that. Did you understand
I
that?
did not understand that at all. My Gaelic is a little bit rusty. So anyways, let's take a quick look back at some of the most noteworthy developments after our first day of play in the Rumble stage. I think I have to start with the biggest surprise, the biggest story, the fact that G2 are the last undefeated team, taking down T1 and RNG.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was kind of like, all right, you know, this is really cool now. We get to see G2 take down T1. I never expected it to kind of clap us as well, taking down RNG too.
Yeah, I mean, it was equal distribution to both the LCK and LPL. And honestly, some flawless play. And I really want to highlight Caps, who we had talk in the group stage about him being the best performer in the tournament. It is an absolute fact at this point.
I mean, no doubt about it. I think when you see the clips on your screen, T1 really played that early game well, and I did not actually believe in G2's ability to team fight their way back in. But time and time again, they found the initiations, and just in that last fight as well, FLICKR's killer instincts repositioning in team fights was flawless.
Yeah, I mean, I think FLICKR really stepped up, but the team just felt like they were all on the same page, considering we expected, you know, Jankos and Caps to be really working well together, but it feels like all 5 members just clued in so well.
And that seemed to be the story of G2 yesterday, right? Like, they took down T1 with superior team fighting. They took down RNG with superior team fighting. It really felt like they were just playing off all the same hymn sheet, and it kind of got to a point where I was like, look, Jankos having these big Dagda and Aux setting up for those fights against T1 with Caps falling over the top. And then as we got into it, as you said, FLICKR against RNG, that Kai'Sa was absolutely incredible.
The thing that I really, really appreciated about all the games, actually all of the games yesterday, just a big step up in ability to compete and trade with one another. You know, the fact that T1 were winning early and then G2 had to come back. I do think I want to draw some conclusions, though. Not too bold, but I think everybody anticipated a top 3 and a bottom 3, with G2, T1, and RNG being up there. But now in both the top 3 and the bottom 3 with the results from yesterday, there are some shuffles that have come in here. I mean, G2 on top.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was expecting G2 to at least be able to take 1 or 2 games off RNG and T1, but to see them take both games yesterday was incredible. And I think it kind of highlighted a lot of the issues that we've seen on both T1 and RNG, right? For T1, not really being able to play the side lanes properly. We end up seeing some of the flips that we got at Baron that they've done domestically as well. And for RNG, it just felt like, you know, trying to find these team fights didn't really work out for them, and they looked very disjointed.
Yeah, and I feel like this needs to be a learning experience for both of them, because I feel like these top teams are going to be able to trade blows, but G2 clearly have a really good read on the meta. They have a good understanding of what works for them. And I think ultimately T1 and RNG need to bounce back if they're going to contest in the second round robin against them.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see from Caps as well, like how many different picks he's been able to bring out. Like, it shows that G2 do have that good grasp of, you know, different pocket picks they can bring to the table.
You know, you just made me nervous. I hope G2 are not peaking too early. We've talked a lot about the top half of the table. Let's take a look at the bottom. I mean, Saigon Buffalo, that balloon just exploded. I think the battle for the expected 4th seed is going to shape up to be very interesting, especially once we take a look at PSG, EG, as well as Buffalo and how they perform.
Yeah, we had the good news for G2 coming out 2-0, but for Saigon Buffalo going 0-2, it's rough, especially as a lot of people were super hyped on this team after coming out of the group stage. Very aggressive, really good at establishing early leads and contesting the enemy team. It felt like they weren't able to find those windows yesterday.
Yeah, and that's the big one. Not being able to establish those early leads meant that they couldn't actually play that aggressive style, because oftentimes when we looked at them in groups, it was a lot of them playing for skirmishes and team fights, and they were able to take down teams like DFM with superior team fighting, but not having these early leads meant that against EG, they couldn't actually come into those objective fights and actually find those leads, and then that aggression turned against them, where EG were able to get that continuous lead from Saigon Buffalo's just essentially thrown themselves.
I'm so excited to see how both halves of the table play out, and then also whether or not these expected, anticipated bottom 3 teams can pick up wins against the top, because we still need to see all these things, and we're making some bold assumptions. But do you think expectations coming into Rebel was that PSG or Saigon Buffaloes would have been above one another. And it's an interesting dilemma based on group stages, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of, it's been a bit of a funky one for me because I don't know how to gauge PSG talent. It feels like we've kind of seen them grow a little bit over the course of this because you kind of look at the bot lane, it's been a little bit funky, but that's starting to get a little bit better. You're looking at their team fighting, objective setup getting a bit stronger, whereas Saigon kind of seem to have started to deteriorate as this has gone on.
So I do think this is something I want to pick up later throughout the day once we get a couple more games under our belts. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the stellar individual performances that have already happened in the Rumble stage, shining a spotlight on, let's say, PSG's bottom lane. Unified, welcome to the tournament. That was the tone of social media yesterday.
Yeah, I think Unified, we saw really good performances from him domestically. Wasn't really there in the group stage, but he had such a fantastic game, particularly on this Xayah. Just able to find perfect opportunities for the feathers consistently and really driving the team forwards in these team fights.
And I think it's really interesting to see how Unified and Kaiwing have both stepped up because domestically they did struggle when they got to the playoff stage. Then we had a similar story in groups, but now they seem to be taking over where they're actually able to find those plays that are making the difference. And Kaiwing as well, being able to roam around the map, setting up plays on mid and top, getting Rift on, and then turning that goal back into Unified.
And I feel like a lot more teams have done this than we expected, finding a kill onto T1's bot lane, but to do that again, just absolutely massive for them.
I mean, I definitely think the bot laners have been a little bit of a surprise hit coming into the tournament. There was so much focus on the mids and the tops and junglers that I do think maybe pre-tournament, a little underserved. Now we're seeing a lot of excitement. Another bot laner that's popping off as well, FLICKR. This is a kid that continues to surprise me. I think I just need to change my expectations because the group stage looked fantastic, and yesterday against T1 and RNG, he played phenomenal.
Yeah, he looked absolutely incredible, and especially as we kind of look towards like his story from LEC, right? At the start of playoffs, G2 weren't really setting this guy up for success, and they really struggled in team fights against teams like Fnatic on their first round of playoffs. But now as we teetered on in towards later playoffs, and as we've seen now in MSI, they have been so much better at setting him up. The Kaisi yesterday, the killer instincts were absolutely incredible, and FLICKR was popping the hell off.
And it's been such a hype meta that we've seen for an AD carry to be popping off. It's no longer the sort of Jinx Aphelios backline teamfight carry. It is like you're playing these aggressive picks that want to dive forward, the Kai'Sa moving and setting the pace for yourself in the team fight.
I mean, great job to our live design team because we had a chat with them prior to the tournament. They want to see some diversity, want to see some things being mixed up, and all of those changes giving us a lot of hype games. Turning our attention to one of the other oldest people in League of Legends, former world champion and currently probably the best season in several years. I'm talking about Impact, of course. Yesterday, Freak said this on the cast, that Impact has always been an impactful player. But I think in particular 2022, he may be in the best shape on a variety of picks that he has been in years.
And I think what's cool is we've seen yesterday in particular, they were putting him on more carries. It wasn't just the Ornn duty that we saw domestically heavy in the LCS, things like the Jax and the Gwen. The fact he brought out his own Will skin and had such an impactful performance when it came to those later game team fights.
Yeah, especially the Gwen against RNG. He absorbed a ton of pressure in the early stages. Now look, unfortunately they weren't able to pick up the win in those games, but the fact he was able to take that much pressure, then still come out as a big team fight carry, and especially as Danny hasn't been able to find the same success as he found domestically on the international stage, having Impact step up to take that mantle has been incredibly successful for EG.
I mean, a question I'm also going to have about EG throughout the course of the Rumble stage is the changes in the meta, some of the adaptations that need to come into play. You just talked about those front-to-back team fights and the carries that allow Danny to shine in some ways. One final thought on Impact. I cannot wait to see him taking on T1. Now, we can't possibly have a conversation about standout players without turning our attention to the middle lane, and we've got some absolutely legendary talent in attendance this year. Xiaohu, Caps, and of course FLICKR. So we'll take a few minutes to talk about all three mid laners. They've been crucial to the early game for all of their respective teams. Dagda, I'm going to come to you first. Can you draw any similarities or clear differences between these three players?
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing is that the conversation around FLICKR and Xiaohu as we came into MSI was that they were both kind of playing that facilitator role, often leaning to cover like cross-map plays and stuff like that, but we're actually seeing Caps do a very similar story. Like you can actually see it on your screens right here is on this Zoe against RNG, moving down to the bot side, covering the dive. We're actually seeing Caps lending himself to that style, but he's actually doing it on very different champions from what we've seen from the likes of FLICKR and Xiaohu.
And ultimately, as you said, facilitators for Xiaohu or FLICKR. If you look domestically, if I think of carries from the LPL, it's Knight and Rookie. If I think of carries from the LCK, it's Chovy and Showmaker. But for EU, Caps is that big carry, the one who steps up, the one you want on your team in an international best of 5. And I feel like that is what is giving G2 an edge.
I mean, Caps is probably playing potentially the best of his career. And I know that is a bold statement to make. Maybe it's against expectations. Maybe there's a little bit of a surprise after last year's performances.
And that's the thing. I think as well, like, one of the big things for Caps, of course, is the crowd is back, right? Like, this is a guy that thrives off that energy, and you're seeing it now. When we weren't having the best of times from Caps even in this split, he came into playoffs, suddenly the crowd is back, and this guy's popping the hell off once more. You get a crowd and boost on. This is a guy that feeds off that energy, and you're seeing it once more.
Crowd buff, crowd buff. Okay, now, can Xiaohu get revenge on FLICKR? For any long-time viewers, FLICKR and Xiaohu went head-to-head best of 5 in Shanghai, if I recall correctly. FLICKR played 5 games of Galio in a row and took down Xiaohu and RNG. Now the roles are reversed. Xiaohu is playing on FLICKR's home turf. The all-time head-to-head's 12-5 in favor of FLICKR. Do you think Xiaohu can take him down?
I believe he can do it. I mean, I think Xiaohu has been so instrumental for this team. T1 has been fantastic, but I feel like the role Xiaohu has played for RNG is the reason they're at this tournament, right? They had a struggle in playoffs, and he was a difference maker, even against those big mid lane talents, those big carries I talked about, like Knight and Rookie.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like for Xiaohu as well, like, he's always kind of been living in the shadow of former people. Like, when you look at RNG in the past, it was Uzi that he had to try and step out from. He was Spring Emperor because Uzi would come back and Xiaohu had to take on his role of facilitating Uzi. Now you're still looking at, he's never beaten FLICKR in an international best of 5. This is the last demon that Xiaohu has to take down so he can actually become the player that everyone's expecting him to from RNG.
The thing that's shocking as well is that coming into today's matchup, as they will be facing off against one another, they both lost to G2 yesterday. Nobody was expecting that, so we're going to keep unpacking as the show plays out. And these mid laners have clashed multiple times in years past. Tonight, FLICKR and Xiaohu will face off in what's become a heated rivalry between T1 and RNG. This is our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz. T1 and RNG. Two of the most storied organizations in League of Legends. The only teams to have won MSI twice. SK Telecom continue to rule the world!
RNG, take down the world champ!
Uzi, MLXG, Ming, Xiaohu, FLICKR, Bang, Bengi, Wolf. These teams have stood the test of time, and now they're on the hunt for their 3rd MSI title.
Third Dragon available here for RNG. Jojo again in trouble. He's going to go down to Gala. And now Gala's going to keep on going. Bing with the wraparound, but KI over the top. It's the double. It's the triple. It's the pentakill for Gala.
In the past, the LCK has dominated the League esports scene, but they have been quickly overtaken by the number of talented players within the LPL. Now, with the second coming of FLICKR, it seems like the perfect time for T1 to assert their dominance over the East once again.
So now he's trying to protect his mid laner, but the last breath comes in. The ultimate's there from Zeus as well. No one's died just yet. FLICKR is going to be able to take down Targamas, but then immediately 3 kills. And now Owner is trying to chase this one out. Caps is in trouble. The heartbreak comes on through, and the resets are coming in. Can he find the next one? Yes, he can.
This is the most played matchup on the international stage, and right now the score is 15-5 in favor of the LCK champions. However, RNG have a title to defend and are determined to show that the LPL should still be considered the best league in the world. In this featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz, we get to see what could possibly be a preview of the finals. This is a historic matchup with two of the biggest organizations in professional League of Legends. We talked just a little bit there about Xiaohu versus FLICKR, and I've got this thought bouncing around in my head that I need to validate throughout the course of the day. But the last time that RNG and T1 were at MSI together at the same time, meaning they had won their respective leagues, was 2016. And since then, these teams have kind of been top of their region at different times, you know, trading international titles. I mean, you think back to 2018, the almost golden road, T1 weren't there. So what I'm interested to see is, as they are right now, the #1 teams from their leagues, the strongest they can be at the moment, how they face up against each other.
Yeah, I think T1, you know, historically have had such a legacy, right? But RNG kind of came in a bit late, like their MSI wins, particularly the most recent one when SKT went there.
Yeah.
Now, though, I feel like we're looking at a situation where T1, people are asking, is this, you know, a chance for them to overcome like their 2015 form? And for RNG, I don't personally think this is their best we've seen them at, but we still have a lot of tournament left.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, there's been so many changes through these two rosters, right? Like, or even through these organizations. Like, you look back, you know, 2013, Spain when we started to see the T1 dynasty start to kick off. And then you come into RNG where the Uzi dynasty ended and now it's the Xiao who reigning supreme. But, you know, you got Bin coming in, you've got Gala, the new upcomer as well, even got Wei coming across from E-Star only just last year. Like, it feels like you've still got a lot of changes and growth coming through on both these squads.
The parallels as both teams at different points were the best team in the world, and then supplanted, upset, overtaken, and then they need to rebuild new names, new players that now have to carry the torch of the former champions. I wonder if it would be fair to say that this could be the battle for second place, gentlemen. As we continue to look ahead towards today's games. I'm going to have a little bit more fun with this one. I want to talk a little bit about the meta, see what's developing here at MSI. I want to talk about Kalista and Zoe especially. Kalista yesterday, 100% presence. One of the big jumps from group stage to Rumble.
Yeah, actually 100% win rate as well. It was banned for pick 2, won both those games. And the thing is, in the group stage, the only time we really saw it, there was a couple of games, but mostly it was banned against Holy Phoenix. But we have come into Rumble. Clearly, people have seen this step up in scrims, and it's just been either banned out or completely prioritized. And it's kind of understandable with how much impact it can have in the early laning phase.
Yeah, and even not in the early laning phase when you get out of that as well, because a lot of the strategy that we're seeing here develop is that teams are foregoing things like Dragon, looking for turret plates, looking for Rift Heralds. And when you're going towards, you know, early skirmishes or the ability to be a lane bully, Kalista fits that beautifully. We're also setting up for these big wombo combos that we're seeing, particularly that ultimate can be so crucial in some of these early fights.
I mean, we're seeing those brawler bot laners kind of rising up a little bit, and a big discussion on broadcast yesterday was talking about the team fight style in some ways. We already mentioned today, T1 struggling a bit with some of the side lanes. So, Aux, do you think we're going to see more of these champions that do well in 5v5s and big team fights and kind of the meta shift towards that, let's just go, you know, ham at the Baron pit and whoever comes on top wins the game?
I mean, I think it's worked for G2, right? I think they've really delivered on those sort of team fighting competitions. And I mean, I kind of want to broach this into the other champion we discussed, which was Zoe, because I think Caps had a fantastic Zoe performance. This is something that, you know, we saw a little bit in the LPL domestically. Knight was really big on it, but mostly we haven't seen a ton. And then he brings it out, has a good lane matchup into Ahri in terms of providing pressure. But when it comes to those team fight setups, the long-range bubble is so hard to contest if you don't have vision of the Zoe. And it means if you do land a bubble, that's like the signal to go in and engage.
Yeah, and I think as well, just great and like facilitating some of the, well, shutting down of the roams coming through from the Ahri. And as well, I just think it's a good shout out for Caps, right? Again, like we're seeing him bring these new picks to the forefront. We got the Anivia, now we're getting the Zoe as a counter to the Ahri. He feels like he has so much in his tank that he can bring to the table. And I'm excited to see if he can have a similar impact if we end up with this Zoe Ahri just becoming the meta now.
Now, the next question I'm going to ask is, are we seeing the final form of this meta, or do you anticipate some more changes to come in? Are you missing anything that you thought would show up?
So I actually think, and talking to G2 again, I feel like they have more in the tank. Like we saw the Vladimir come out from Broken Blade as an answer into the Gwen. It feels like this is a team that has really kind of deep dove into the meta to try and figure out, you know, what are actually going to be the big picks coming through and what can we bring to the table. So I don't think we've seen the last of what G2 have bring to the table.
Yeah, I think G2 have the best read at the moment, but we've seen even from groups to Rumble, there's been such a development in teams' read and like what counters they can bring out, what champions are going to prioritize, what's good. So I feel like the pace is still very fast. And at the moment, I'm still looking at like in the top 3, RNG and T1 are playing catch up on G2.
I mean, can't believe that. Please don't peak too early. Please don't peak too early. Let's take a look at today's schedule so we know what we are looking forward to seeing. It is going to be a day of rematches, of course. I'm going to take 2 of these games off the card. So G2 versus Evil Geniuses will open the day. We've got a pre-match plan for that in a few minutes' time. And RNG versus T1 at the end of the day. Everyone is excited for that. So,
I'll be all right,
gentlemen,
you know.
What other games would you like to see?
Yeah, I'm looking at PSG Talon and Evil Geniuses. Like, this is kind of the battle for that 4th place slot if you're looking at the separation with the top 3. And it feels like PSG Talon have kind of come from strength to strength as they've kind of figured out how they want to try and play. We even saw them having a great game yesterday where they had Kaibing roaming all over the place. So I think EG are going to have to work cut out for them here today to see if they actually can take down PSG Talon.
Yeah, and honestly, I am kind of looking at that last game, Trevor, to ruin your afternoon. Everyone has talked about how Saigon Buffaloes could be that sort of kryptonite to G2, that early aggression could catch them off guard. And we've seen Fongvu Buffaloes manage to cause issues for them in the past when they had that 2-0 against them. They could end that undefeated streak.
Wouldn't it be the most G2 thing ever to win against EG, have 23 games in a row, undefeated, and then drop again to the VCS?
It'd be beautiful.
I think the odds are probably...
It would be hilarious.
It's going to happen. I think it might just happen. Right, let's turn our attention to the matter at hand. G2 versus EG, our first match of the day.
for EG, but the carries aren't the important thing, as Inspire gonna again interrupt that knockup. +1 kill for EG.
I don't think I played at my best, so I'm looking forward to having a rematch and showing up better.
Double kill for Jankos already in the team. Throws down the ulti. He's picked off Gumayushi.
G2 with the stronger undefeated streak here.
And welcome to the 5th time that we will see G2 taking on Evil Geniuses. This is obviously a rematch from the group stage where G2 went 4-0. So I want to shift our perspective to that of the Evil Geniuses. What can they learn? What are the expectations? What do they have to change to come in and look for that win against G2?
So I definitely think we've kind of seen them like picking up the pace as they've started to learn against G2, right? And we've seen every single time these teams have faced off, they've gotten closer and closer. But I think the big thing for me is kind of having a bit more of an impact in the early stage, because it felt like G2 was continuously able to run away with those early games. And I think a large portion of that comes down to like the champion choices from Inspired, right? We've seen them go for the Karthus, we've seen them go towards the Lily as well. And personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of these. Like you can see it behind me, right? With this Karthus pick, we end up with a Karthus and a Ryze in the mid, 2 AP mids, and then you get Caps with the Anivia, which means you've got a ton of opportunity to try and like push in mid, shut down the Ryze roam. Karthus doesn't really get the
Nobody
opportunity to play.
expected that Anivia, by the way.
I
That
know,
was
yeah.
the first real professional game, because I think the last one was at Rift Rivals or All-Star, something like that. I mean, mind-boggling response. But I mean, in terms of the draft, did you see adaptation over the course of the 4 games? Are you happy with what you've seen yesterday as well?
Yeah, I definitely think we got to see a little bit more. I think the Lilia was not the best idea, though, because I think the Lilia kind of fit into that farming style where I want to see Inspired actually have that big impact in the early game and actually like try and contest Jankos at those early buffs. But I think the problem that we saw is that when the Lilia came through, you kind of got the same with the Karthus, where there's just no impact from Inspired in the early game, and G2 can run away with us.
But honestly, I feel like even in this draft, a big thing was the lane matchups, right? We get Tristan and Ezreal, which is completely fine. Jojo Pion on the Trinity to Silas is a good matchup. He had a CS lead, was providing a lot of pressure, and then top lane that GP into the Gnar, that's a completely fine matchup. I feel like, you know, we've seen adaptations over those 4 games where there's more favorable early matchups for EG. And honestly, I feel like if you're playing a team multiple times in a row, it's better for the weaker team because eventually you might find a game where they slip up, but also you're the one playing catch up and you're the one learning more from these defeats than G2 is.
Now, can they put that into practice is going to be the question. This is an interesting thought here. I wonder if it might be fair to say that EG challenged G2 more than RNG or T1 did yesterday. Come on, don't laugh at that. Don't laugh at Okay. Maybe it's bold. Aux, we're going to take a look at some of the highlights here, some of the plays that did work out, at least in EG's favor. And they're going to look to capitalize on that. In terms of gameplay, because we covered draft extensively, what do you also want to see from specific players?
Well, I think ultimately Inspired has been such a massive factor in this team's early game, as you know, Rob was saying. But also when it comes to those team fights, this is something that G2 actually felt like they had some challenges against EG, and I think it's where EG have really flourished domestically. So if they get to that point of the game when they have a lead or they even, I could see them looking to challenge G2.
Yeah, and there was definitely a game against G2 where they should have been able to take it, right? Unfortunately, Evil Geniuses end up just having that misstep in the base where they're G2 were able to take the fight. Again, FLICKR popping off in the Kai'Sa. So I think getting rid of these big picks like the Kai'Sa from FLICKR, enabling your own team a little bit more with these early game junglers should set yourself up nicely. And just being able to contest in the early stages where you can hit this mid game, set up for these strong front to back fights and actually take it against G2.
The other thing that's very important to remember and call out is G2. They do make mistakes, especially around Elder Dragons and Barons. We saw in the group stage as well, making a couple of bold choices. Yesterday against T1, they lost the early game pretty handily. So there are opportunities here for EG. The pressure is on EG to surprise and to take them down. But of course, yesterday, Law did get some insight from EG's head coach, Turtle, in the Verizon Game Day interview.
And welcome back to present for the second day of the Rumble Stage MSI 2022. I'm joined by Turtle, the head coach for Evil Geniuses. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
How do you reflect on day one? 1 win, 1 lose. Talking to Volkan, he was telling me that there's some good takeaways from the RNG game. What's your view on that?
My view on that should be 2-0 for us, but unfortunately we couldn't beat RNG. But we could see our progress after groups, because we have some tough games against G2. In the beginning, we lost some of the games and like lost hard, and then we got better. We almost beat in the group stage. So now we're feeling like really confident that we are really better than before.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's our take on that.
We'll get to the G2 topic a bit later because I have so much to ask about this. But first, the lineup. Some veterans, but also some very young players. I believe it has been a bit hard maybe for them facing, I think about Jojo Pion on the mid lane, facing the likes of Xiaohu, Caps, FLICKR. How have you been able to help him, but also Danny, to relieve some pressure off their shoulders and to put them in the right mindset?
Yeah, so we always try to remind them that they are here to enjoy the trip and learn as much as possible. So my philosophy is not like we shouldn't get too stressed about like, oh, we need to improve so fast, we need to be like put so much stress on them. So we try to relieve that and like just focus on like enjoying the progress, see things that they can improve, and like not like get too stressed about like putting so much pressure on themselves just to improve. Because like just improve fast, because it's kind of really hard to do that. So they want to improve, we want them to improve, but we don't put that pressure on them. So it's a big difference on that, because a lot of rookies who come to international level and they play against like these really good players, veteran players. So they try to like one game to the next, they are try to improve so much, but it's so much pressure. So we just try to keep that cool and like looking forward for the improvement like as smooth as possible.
I think it's an amazing learning experience also getting to face these players. They're going to be super strong coming back to the LCS. But you were talking about G2 earlier. Seeing that they beat RNG and T1, how do you feel about being able to challenge them in the group stage?
I mean, we were pretty confident, like almost beating G2 two times, and now seeing them beating T1 and RNG, we're like, okay, so we almost beat RNG too, so we can beat G2 and we can beat T1 too, because they beat T1. So we are feeling confident there. So because we had close games with them, we feel like we are good too. So then we can beat them, all of those three top teams.
Have you been able to watch their games today? Okay, what's your takeaway from this, and what should we be focusing on for the rematch, G2 and EG?
I mean, G2, they have like a really strong mid laner, Cap, so it's really good. So this is like the most important matchup for Jojo. So I think if you can beat Caps in the lane, we're gonna win the game. So pretty much it's like that. Jojo can control the map too, so we're just gonna beat them. So it's almost around that.
All right, control Caps, control the game. Well, Turtle, thank you so much for the interview. Best of luck against G2 and the rest of the game. And guys, back to you.
Thank you so much, Law. What a fantastic interview with Turtle. I really, really appreciate the perspective. I like the tone that he was talking about in terms of not putting more pressure than you need to on the players. You need to learn, you need to adapt. I mean, that was the entire premise for our pregame and what we're looking ahead to. I do, however, have to call out the most pure form of hopium I have ever heard in an interview. We almost beat G2, who beat RNG and T1. So by the transitive properties of understanding the circle of suck, for people who remember that, we can beat RNG and T1. Now, I acknowledge the fact, yes, they did have some competitive games, but now it's up to them to prove it and step up.
Yeah, look, I think they have definitely improved over the course of time. And look, when you've got these guys that are like learning a heap, as you can see, like they are actually like every single time EG seem to take the stage, like you can see the improvements from Jojo Pion, you can see the improvements from Danny, and especially for like Jojo Pion, when he's got enough cheek for a second hour. So I want to see this lad grow with that confidence and actually like use that learning and then keep that confidence and then move on into the later portion of his career.
I just love that it was like, talking about the rookies and like, we want to develop them, don't put too much pressure on them, but we're going to slam G2, right? And it's just like, fair play, you got to have the confidence going in.
The thing that I like is it's more games on the meta. It's more games for Danny to adjust and adapt, because the things that made him and the team successful domestically are not necessarily working. Just one moment, I want to check in with what the fans at home are thinking with our MasterCard fan predictions. You can vote every single day on Twitter at MasterCard Nexus. And today the fans at home have voted for G2 with 87% of the vote. I actually thought it was going to be higher.
Yeah, I mean, look, G2, you're already 4-0. It feels inevitable that you're going to get the 5-0. And look, for me, you just have to keep this so then you can keep the win streak alive for, Buffaloes to take it.
But it would be hilarious if they lost to EG, honestly. It would be such a G2 thing to do. I feel like the fan vote as well is pretty generous for EG. I feel like people are like hoping for that upset potential. It's like no one beats EG 5 times in a row, but ultimately G2 coming in heavily favored.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. All the pressure is going to be on EG to develop, to improve, to impress. Let's see whether or not they have enough tricks in the bag to pull it out. That is enough out of us as we kick off day 2 of the MSI Rumble stage with round 5 of NA versus EU.